So today I'm going to be showing you how I got this 300 win streak by showing you all of the best ways to win inside of Roblox Rivals that you really need to start using. And if you guys do want keys or anything like that for yourself, make sure to like and subscribe and comment your username down below and be a lead in my future videos. Anyways, the first best thing that I want to discuss inside of Roblox Rivals if you want to win every single one of your games is knowing the best counters for all of the weapons. You are going to be versing a lot of really good players. Even if you start off by versing like a couple bad players, you will eventually get someone who is insanely tryhard at the game. And the best ways to counter tryhards is to always be incredibly unpredictable. If you're doing the exact same thing every single time, they're just going to recognize your pattern behavior and outplay you every single time. It's also likely that they're going to be using extremely pay-to-win weapons, so you want to rely on stuff like movement and outplays rather than trying to get the one-up them with like a katana or something like that, because if they're using the exogun, you're just going to lose every single time. Not only that, if I'm versing a tryhard that's like level 200-300, I'm definitely not going to be playing the arena map, because 9 times out of 10 all these sweaty tryhards, they only play a one map, so confusing it up and switching it up a little bit would definitely alter their play style a bit in my favor. And realistically, this is only the first out of many different strategies I'm going to be going through, so you guys can get yourself a 300 win streak and get the really cool blaze wrap. So if you want to get an incredibly high win streak and know how you can win every single one of your games, make sure you watch it all the way to the end of this video. Anyways guys, the next thing that I also want to touch up on as well is getting better movement. Movement is key in Rivals, and something that I don't see a lot of people doing is trying to master the movement as soon as possible. Movement in bigger maps like Crossroads, for example, and docks are incredibly crucial, especially if you want to get an advantage over your opponents and start winning against them. You want to make sure you know how to properly slide jump and use all of the map surroundings as a way to get an edge over your opponents. Knowing movement is incredibly important, but what about this next thing that I'm going to be talking about, which is probably even more important, is checking your FPS and improving it. Now, there is a ton of ways to improve FPS inside of just Roblox in general, but I think the most common method is block strap. Now, I'm not going to be going through all of like the F flags and stuff. I am just going to make some of you guys aware of it though. If you have block strap installed, make sure you have the best F flags so you can get the most FPS. I know some people use like gray skyboxes and stuff like that. I don't think it's particularly necessary, but you can also do other stuff like disabling all of like the lighting techniques and stuff, which will make your game run incredibly better. Another thing that I also want to go over as well, if you are sick and tired of getting so many sweaty tryhards in your games, maybe try switching it up a little bit and playing with a friend. Sometimes in a 1v1 scenario, you'll put at a massive disadvantage where you're going against like level 200s and level 300s, and you can't really make an outplay on them because they're just crazy good. However, if you're playing with a friend, you might actually increase your chances of getting a high win streak and winning. In fact, I know that most of the top leaderboard players actually play 5v5 with overpowered broken strategies and avoid the 1v1 game modes just for this reason. They don't want to be going up against sweats every time they play. They would much rather go against mediocre players, so they team up in a 5 squad and they just absolutely wipe lobbies. Obviously, you don't need to get 5 players on your team, but even if you're playing trios or squads with some friends, you might actually put yourself at a nice advantage. Especially if one of your teammates is really good at the game, yeah, you'll definitely be getting a high win streak. Another thing that's also particularly common that I see a lot of people is locking in on places that are common spots for people to go. For example, in the arena map, obviously people are going to go to the ramp, all right? It's probably the first thing everyone does inside of the game. In fact, it is probably the most common location that people go to on that map. So if you have something like a Molotov or something like that, Molotoving the ramp at the start of the game not only gives you an advantage because you can use that ramp, but then you'll know that your opponent is not going to be able to go there, so they're going to have to rush into the center of the map. And since you know this fact, you can actually go ahead and pre-plan in the future to surprise attack your opponents, giving you a crazy advantage. Now, one thing that I was definitely doing a bunch while trying to get my super high win streak is actually playing FFAs to warm up and practice my aim. Now, if you're a mediocre player, you know all of the game's basics, you have some decent weapons, and you're just trying to get better at the game, playing free-for-all puts you in like completely unrealistic situations where there are so many people and it is basically impossible not to die, okay? But if you're being put in these situations all the time and you're actively outbeating every single opponent in the game, you'll know that you're prepped and warmed up for the 1v1s ahead, especially if you're warming up for sweats. Try and actually get into players' lobbies that are quite good. That way you're playing against people that have similar skill level and not just bots. It'll make you way more warmed up for when you go ahead and verse someone that is of similar level, because that way you'll be super prepared and you'll hopefully have your aim warmed up to the point where you can just absolutely destroy them. I personally practice my aim in FFA all the time, especially before queuing duels, because that way I know my aim is nice and sharp and ready for the games ahead. On top of practicing aiming, another thing that is also really crucial if you want to start winning a bunch of games is learning how to peek properly. Now, what I see a lot of intermediate and new players actually failing to do is be able to peek properly. What I see a lot of people do is they fling themselves either way too high up in the sky, making them a easy laser target, or they just stand out in the open for too long and they just literally don't do anything. What you need to do instead is combine the last tip that I gave with the common location strategies and actually combine it with peeking. If you're not sure if your opponent is there, you can actually quickly jiggle peek on the side just to see if your opponent is there or not. Just peek enough to where you can get the information and go back to safety without leaving yourself vulnerable. That way you'll get the important information knowing that your opponent is there or not, and you can plan accordingly. You can also slide jump up to peek as well, but this is a lot more risky because you make yourself a prone target to being lasered. But yeah, just keep that in mind. If you're not already optimizing your game sense, you gotta be peeking, you gotta be knowing the location of your enemies, because if you're wandering around like a headless chicken, you're just gonna get absolutely destroyed, all right? Another thing that a lot of people definitely don't utilize at all and should definitely start utilizing if you really want to win your games and start getting really pro at rivals, you gotta utilize the Keybinds system, okay? Now, this is mostly for PC players, but I know console players also have a very similar system, and I'm pretty sure mobile players do as well. But for PC and mobile players, you have quick melee and you have quick utility. Now, for stuff like med kits especially, quick utility is extremely important, because if you just got hit really bad and you're looking to heal up very quickly, by pressing one button, you can start the med kit process. And it doesn't take that long to quick kill, so having the quick utility be a close keybind like Q, E, or G, it'll make it really easy to quick kill. For example, my keybinds are actually E to quick melee and G to quick utility. And I definitely would strongly recommend setting up a proper keybinding system, because I reckon it's probably won me almost every single one of my games. I probably wouldn't be at a 300 win streak if it wasn't for my comfortable keybinds. Now, if you also want to start winning a bunch of games as well, I talked about optimizing game sense, but nothing screams optimizing game sense more than listening out for audio cues. Every single gun has a distinct sound, so let me know if you can actually guess these sounds that I'm about to play right now. Okay, that one was pretty easy. That was obviously the sniper, but what about this one? Now, if you didn't get that one, that was the katana. Now, this is what I mean by optimizing your game sense and knowing all of the audio cues. If you can actually hear the katana sound, you will know that your enemy has a katana right before he even activates it, so you can play accordingly. You'll know to play more passive and not make any aggressive and egotistical shots. You don't want to be spraying your enemies down when you know that they got a katana. You want to watch out and play very cautious. You can also listen to stuff for like the scythe dash, and also listen for the minigun charge up. Just very simple audio cues like that will change the tides of your game, because you'll know what weapons your enemy has. And to be honest, in a 1v1 situation, that is very crucial. Now, let's say you're put in a situation where it is extremely close 1v1. However, you're only 10 HP and you know that you might not win this fight. Something that you can actually do to prevent you losing that match is actually just knowing some of the really sneaky hiding spots inside of Roblox Rivals. Now, this is definitely a super annoying strategy that a lot of probably new and intermediate players use, and maybe even some good ones, I'm not sure. But in maps like Docks and Station, there are actually tons of hiding spots that you can use to your advantage if you want to purposely draw a game. For example, in the Docks map, you can hide in some of the containers or hide behind some of the buildings. Your enemies are likely not going to check there. So if you want to quickly draw a game, that's one of the places that you can go. And in the station map, behind these crates and behind this, and basically every single brick wall, you can hide behind there. Something worth noting though as well, in case you want to draw a game on purpose. However, I wouldn't do this too many times because then the game will randomly pick a winner and you don't want that not being in favor of you. So only do this strategy a couple times if you are getting into really close battles. Now, if you guys want a 300 win streak, or even if you want something lower than that, like a 100 win streak, you're going to need a bunch of tracking. Now, if you guys don't know what tracking is, it is extremely self-explanatory. It's basically just keeping your crosshair on a moving target as consistently as possible. Basically, if you have really good tracking, it will allow you to laser your opponents, basically like an aimbotter, alright? If you want to practice really good tracking, you can either go to the shooting range and shoot the purple dummies, or you can go into FFA and practice tracking there if you want something a little bit more realistic. It is really important to have good tracking if you want to destroy your opponents and get a super high win streak, because I can't name one high win streak player that does not have good tracking in some capacity. Since all of the guns are really low time to kill, you almost need to have insanely good tracking if you want to be able to destroy your opponents. Another thing that's probably just as useful as tracking as well is having a good sensitivity. Now, if you guys want to know my personal sensitivity, on Roblox, I use 0.2 sensitivity, and I feel like that is probably the best sensitivity to use, at least for me. However, it is extremely personal preference. Some people like slower sensitivity and some people like higher sensitivity. But if you want to find out if your sensitivity is good, just run these 3 simple tests and you'll figure out really quickly. If you're able to switch targets really quickly, even by doing 360 spins, then you've probably got a pretty decent sensitivity. If you're not able to switch targets quickly, then your sensitivity might be too slow. However, if you move your mouse cursor a little bit and it goes flying doing 5 million 360s, then your sensitivity might just be too high. Find something that's a middle ground where you can do a bunch of 360s but also have consistent tracking without needing to fling your mouse cursor around the freaking mouse pad, and yeah, then you'll be ballin', alright? Now, since we're on the topic of sensitivity and playing around with settings, I should also mention that having a good crosshair and a good field of view is also something that all of the top players use and basically everyone with a high win streak has. So if you're not utilizing all of the best settings in Rivals, you definitely need to turn on these crucial things. For starters, you want to disable shadows and textures and disable wraps in duels. So that way you'll get the most FPS. You also want to enable easy slide. That for me personally makes my sliding and my movement a lot better. I also use 100 FOV. That way I can see a lot more on my screen. You can also adjust stuff like the camera zoom effects, which basically just determines how far away your gun will remain when you aim, so you get the best kind of gameplay possible. Find what works for you. This is mostly personal preference. If you want an opinion on a good crosshair, I would remain for static red crosshair, because red contrasts with basically everything in this game. And it's a super bright color, and it definitely won't blend in with any of the maps. Now guys, this is going to be a super controversial one, but skins equal wins, okay? I'm telling you right now, if you have a good skin, you will get more wins. Now, this definitely isn't the case for every single skin in the game, alright? But I find, in me personally, that a skin with good iron sights and the glass skin are the most pay-to-win skins in the game. Now, if you guys don't know how to get the glass skin, basically you just have to unlock the grenade launcher and you have to get a bunch of playtime with it, but most people just AFK in a free-for-all. I personally don't have the glass one unlocked, so I can't say that this works too well for me, but from what I've heard from other people, the glass skin actually frees up a bunch of space in their field of view. That way they can concentrate on shooting the enemy rather than looking at their cool little guns. I will also say as well, from personal experience, when I use the org skin, I much prefer the circular iron sights. It makes my tracking a lot better when aiming down sights, and it makes my targets a lot easier to hit. And if you have the key sniper as well, you get slightly more space than the regular sniper, which is kind of pay to win, but it is what it is, alright? Blame the game and not the player. Another thing that I also want to touch up as well is knowing all of the maps. Now, since a lot of tryhards are going to always be picking arena, if you know every single map in the game and you actually get super familiar with other maps besides Arena, you actually put yourself in a much greater advantage than probably some of the best players in the game, because they're only going to be playing on one map and practicing on that map. So if you decide to switch something up, like playing on Docks Station, or even some of the more like weirder maps that not many people like, if you get super familiar with them, you'll put yourself in a massive advantage when playing against someone who is probably a lot better than you, and you might even be able to beat them. I know that me personally, if I know that I'm going against someone who's probably a lot better than me, like if they're like level 500 with a million win streak, then I'm going to switch it up and try play something like the back rooms, because I know all the strategies, I know how to counter everything, and that for me is the best way to confuse my opponents. It'll change the tides of the fight, and it will make it less about aim and more about strategy. Another thing you want to do as well is, if you are losing a bunch of your fights in the middle of a round and you're about to lose your epic win streak, try switching up the weapons during the game. You want to make sure that you have a diverse range of weapons. You definitely want to make sure that you have the sniper and the shotgun unlocked, because they are very, very diverse. And you also want to make sure you have something like the revolver and the Uzi unlocked. That way you have many playstyles to choose from, and you can pick and choose if you want to play aggressive or passive depending on your loadout. But if something isn't working, you don't want to keep doing it, okay? You want to make sure you're switching it up constantly to confuse your opponents and make you less predictable. If I'm going to be running the exact same loadout every single game, and people are going to start destroying me because they're going to know exactly what I'm going to do before the round even starts. Playing onto this as well, you also want to be switching play styles. Now, for example, if I'm playing the Docks map, what I might want to do is grenade jump straight over to my enemy and play super aggressive with the assault rifle. However, if that doesn't work, I might want to lay back and start playing more passive with something like the sniper and sitting up super high. That way, I might be able to get a nice cheeky snipe on my opponents as opposed to directly rushing and being super aggressive. Obviously, this is completely situational. It depends on which enemy you're playing against and how good they are and how well they respond to each and every counter. Find what is making you win, and if it's working for you, keep doing it.